This year, 3 of the 4 at-large seats for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees are up for election. The top 6 vote-getters from the August primary will compete for the 3 seats in this November's general election. It looks to be a competitive race, as incumbents are set to face off against well-known newcomers. Join our discussion with candidates vying for the OHA at-large seats next on Insights on PBS Hawaii.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs was founded in 1978 and it's a semi-autonomous state agency with the mandate to better the conditions of Native Hawaiians. The OHA Board of Trustees is composed of 9 members. 5 of them come from districts, and I'll tell you what those districts are. It's Oahu, Hawaii Island, Maui, Molokai and Lanai, and Kauai and Niihau. People elected to those seats must live in the district. The other 4 OHA trustees are designated as at-large and represent the entire state. All voters statewide can vote in all the races. This year, 3 of the 4 OHA at-large seats are up for election. The top 6 vote-getters in the primary election are set to face off in the November general election. Tonight, we will talk to 3 of the candidates on the ballot. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email us or call us with your questions, and we also encourage you to get involved with the conversation on our Facebook page. Now to our guests. Brickwood Galateria is a retired Hawaii state senator serving District 12 on Oahu from 2008 to 2018. He's worked as a musician, actor, and radio personality, and currently hosts a morning show, People Seeking Wisdom, on AM 940. Chad Owens was a wide receiver at Roosevelt High School and the University of Hawaii at Manoa and played professionally in the NFL and CFL. He hosts the Star Advertisers CO2 Rundown talk show, which covers Hawaii's top sports headlines. Now, Sam Kalani Kupua King is an attorney and nonprofit leader. He was born and raised in Kaneohe. He graduated from Georgetown University and earned his law degree from UH Manoa. He's the executive director of Imua TMT, an organization he says is dedicated to the pono construction of TMT on Mauna Kea. Mr. King is on his way, we're told, so he should be joining us shortly. Candidates Le'ahu Isa, John Waihe IV, and Keone Souza either declined our invitation to appear tonight or did not respond. Let me start with a question I'll ask both of you folks. I'll start with you, Brickwood Galateria. What's the biggest issue you see facing Native Hawaiians, and what is the role of OHA in dealing with that issue?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us here to PBS. The programming is top shelf. Ron still is in the top seed, right? So best.
Mizutani, yeah.
Best to him. We all have opinions about what the priority is, what the top why we're even running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. My particular viewpoint is all of the priorities that are currently on the table, I don't disagree with. I think they all have equal status. I'm about political effectiveness, and I know that's how you move policy forward. So in the case of the Native Hawaiians, I don't think we've been able to speak in a cohesive fashion with one voice, because there's a lot of opinions out there, but there's a lot of lack of discipline out there in terms of the vote. And so what I would want to bring is a sense of discipline. I would certainly encourage it when dealing with policy issues to speak. You can go in the back room and just beef it out, but you got to come out singing Hawaii Aloha together.
Good luck with that. Okay, Chad Owens, how about you? What do you see as a primary issue, and how do you see OHA's role?
Yeah, I mean, like Brickwood said, there's so many issues that need resolve. But I think when you look at OHA, I think that machine, the efficiency, the game plan, if you will, I think we need to sort of get in there and take a look at that and prioritize what needs to get done first. That's why nothing's over the other thing right now, but I think we need to take a look. And I really feel like we need to do a better job of getting out into the community, talking with our Native Hawaiians, right? Finding out, hearing it from their mouth and letting them voice what they need done, and taking that into the office, talking and finding the resolve for what they want. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are, right? We are a service to our lahui, to our people.
Do you feel that right now there's not enough of that?
No. I mean, I've come across so many people who still question, what does OHA do? You know, so I feel there's a gap between, you know, OHA and our people. And like Brickwood said, the communication, everyone's, you know, we need to come together.
You know, Brickwood, as a former legislator and also as an entertainer, you're probably very good at branding and messaging, and that's kind of what you folks are talking about here. What do you think is the message that would resonate with the Native Hawaiian community about OHA that's not getting through?
With the Native Hawaiian community or with all of Hawaii?
Both, whatever.
Because everybody votes for OHA. So everybody has vested interest in what happens with OHA. So my message would be what's good for the Native Hawaiian is good for all of Hawaii. So pay attention, that's the value of OHA.
I agree, and just to add to that, I think it's also, we as a people, as a Hawaiian people, need to also understand that, right? We need to work together. There's people that are, not Hawaiian here, but they've born and raised here, live here their whole lives. There's people that come in, they move here, and they end up loving this place. And if you live here and you love this place, and you're Hawaiian, hey, you should love on that person that loves our place, that loves our culture. So we have to find a way to mesh and make it work. And I think that's what we need, is to find that resolve of true community and find a way to thrive together.
You know, it's interesting, in our introductions, we did spend a lot of time describing how politically the office is set up. And I think that the complexity of it is that we say everyone should be involved, invested in OHA. When you look at the results of the election, there's this tremendous number of blank votes. That might be sort of a vestige of the original problem where the Constitution said only Hawaiians should be able to vote for OHA, and then that got thrown out by the courts. So there's some confusion. I'd ask you, Brickwood, it sounds like I think I know the answer to this. Would you encourage non-Hawaiians to vote for OHA? And are you a little concerned that if they do, then they'll actually work against the Native Hawaiian community?
I think it's important for everybody to know who their elected officials are and have educated votes, right? Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of non-Hawaiians voting for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, but it is what it is. With Race v. Cayetano, it's the law of the land. So having said that, it's important for the non-Hawaiians who have the opportunity to vote to learn. And that's why we're here today, to share that, hey, nobody's perfect, but at least, you know, we're putting ourselves out there for you to choose. And the best thing that you got is your vote. So why not go ahead and use it and learn about each one of us and make a conscious decision towards that.
I have a feeling we agree with that. But
yeah, so, you know,
go ahead.
One thing is, like, our Native Hawaiian people are very passionate about our culture. So when this comes up, you know, there's that sense of, hey, why is non-Hawaiians having a say, right, in this? There's that perspective, and you got to respect that. But the law is the law. So if you're a non-Hawaiian who wants to get involved, take that step, get into some Native culture, get into the Native Hawaiian communities, talk with them, learn, educate yourself on the issues so that you have a better understanding, and they're going to respect you for that, you know. And then when you come in, educate yourself on the candidates, you can make that best decision because you've talked to the Native Hawaiian culture, the community. We're on the same page, and that's just going to help elevate everyone. If you're a non-Hawaiian who doesn't want to take the time to get involved and educate yourself, that's fine too. That's it. Everyone's, I encourage you to do other, but
Let me throw this out. Just let me throw this out because I've got all these numbers written out, and I love numbers. I'm just going to throw this out. So the blank votes were 465,000. That was probably 5 times more than any one candidate got. That's kind of a function of everybody gets, I think it was 6 votes in the primary election, right? So do you feel like the way it's set up and operating now politically works? Like you have to basically campaign statewide. You've got a very well-known name, so that helps you. Brickwood is very well-known as well. I want to welcome Sam King, you made it back here. It wasn't not too bad from Nu'uanu.
Mahalo. Thank you for having me. Thank you for accommodating.
So I'm just asking, do you think this is a good way to choose trustees? Right or wrong, do you think it's a good way, or do you think there should be a different way of choosing trustees?
I mean, it's the way it is right now. Whether it's a good way or a bad way, I mean, it's what it is right now, right? So if there needs to be a system change, that's something that we need to talk about. Let's talk to the Native Hawaiians. Hey, are you guys happy? Again, this is what I'm talking about. Let's ask them, are you guys happy with the way that this is set up? Does it make it, is it fair? Does it get confusing? Yeah. Is there too many seats available? Too many people? So that's when we need to work together to sort of create that efficient machine, so that we're not going to have that much missing votes.
But I would add to that, a lot of that has to do with the respect that the blank votes have for the Native Hawaiian community.
Yeah.
Says, listen, I'm not Hawaiian, so why am I voting? But you have the right to vote. So what's good for Hawaiians is good for all of Hawaii, therefore.
Okay, Sam King, I don't know how much of this conversation you heard before this. We were talking a little bit about whether you would encourage non-Hawaiians to vote in OHA, and we talked a little bit about everyone running statewide, so it's very difficult to campaign, very difficult to get your name out there. What are your feelings about the process of electing OHA trustees? Do you think it should be changed?
Well, Daryl, mahalo for having me. Brickwood, Chad, good to see you guys again. As always, it's an honor and pleasure to be with these gentlemen. We are the three that show up to all the panel discussions, so we're all friends now. Tell me about it. Statewide, I've been walking door to door, Kauai, Big Island here, Maui. I've been going all over. And yeah, it's a lot of hard work to meet people and greet people. It's an opportunity, too, for people running for OHA to go out in the community everywhere you go, anywhere you go, and knock on doors and talk to people. So I think that's a positive thing. OHA has a challenge. It's a structural challenge. It's when you have that kind of a voting structure that's based on identity. It's based on race-based politics. I mean, that's what the Rice v. Cayetano case was about. That was the issue. That was the thing the Supreme Court was upset about, was that discriminatory element. And people say it's positive, negative, whatever it is, that's the reality. So it's kind of what Chad was saying, is that's how it is. We're going to have a voting system. We tried it before, where it was only one group of people could vote, and now that's changed. So I go door to door. I tell everybody the exact same thing I'm saying now. Yes, you should vote in OHA. Going to what Brickwood said. What's good for Hawaiians is good for everybody. What's good for everybody is good for Hawaiians. You have an interest in OHA functioning properly. It spends a lot of money, millions of dollars. Whether or not it's enough to do what it's meant to do or not, it's not really relevant. It spends this money. That money's allocated. You should vote in OHA. You should get informed. And I think there's one thing, I'll throw this in there, Daryl. A lot of people don't know, right? There's 3 votes in the primary, 3 votes in the general. You can vote for up to 3 people. And one way to look at it that I've heard that I think is interesting is you don't have to vote for all 3 people. Vote for the candidates right? You can vote for the ones that show up to panel discussions, right? These guys right here. Or, it's just you can vote for who you know, and that's a way to contribute. You don't have to vote for 3 just because you recognize somebody's name.
I'm going to respect our viewers who hear our questions in. So Lokilani from Mililani, how are they going to prevent the dishonesty that happened in the past from occurring again? OHA has a history. Let me start with you, Brickwood. Looking back at some of I think the main issues were inside dealing, some consultants that were hired that were friends of others, and so on. How do you prevent something like that from happening again? Are you at all worried that it's going to do that?
Well, you have to ensure that people are being accused of is true, and they do that through several ways, several guardrails, if you will. Audits, as an example. Okay, there's some audits I think we can depend on, so that we can realign, if you will, and it improves overall efficiency. It certainly provides transparency, which is what everybody wants. But I might add that corruption by public officials is definitely never to be tolerated. And so we're talking about the trust of the viewer. She's asking, what do you guys think about that? There's some inefficiencies in this way. Well, I'd say audits being one of them, and learning about the different processes, OHA processes.
Okay.
For starters.
Chad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's the voters, the power is in their hands, right? And, that's why you have to go and educate yourself on the candidates. Look at their history, right? Look at what they've done, where they've come from. And at the end of the day, you could be this amazing person and you get into politics and sometimes things change you, and that's why I'm here to just say, like, I've always been someone that held himself to a high standard of excellence, integrity, hard work. And I'll never be bought. I'll never be changed. I'm gonna bring what I bring, and that's my energy. And so I think that's how we can help create that change, is you have the right players on the team that can create that atmosphere of trust and integrity and efficiency.
I'm impressed you took this long to get to a football analogy.
I'm trying to keep it separate. But I'm going to throw more in there.
Okay, all right. Sam, your thoughts on the past issues and what is the key to preventing that from
I
happening?
got to start throwing legal analogies in here now with my lawyer background or something.
Those aren't funny.
Yeah, I know, it's killer. And then people know I'm a lawyer, and then they'll be like, I don't want lawyers on the board. Well, I mean, I think that, speaking as the attorney running for the board, right, I know how to spell fiduciary. That was my grandpa's favorite saying, right? And that's really what it comes down to, is recognizing the kuleana we have as trustees and taking that seriously. But, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think that's been brought up multiple times about term limits at OHA. I think that's an interesting thing. There's some criticism about term limits for legislative bodies, and I get that. But OHA has that voting issue where people have low information about it, and it might be something that's healthy for that kind of turnover. The other thing I would say is just vote for new people to come in and take a new look. I mean, all respect to John Wahe and Leahu Isa, it's just there's a time for change. And there's that ability to come in and say, there's a new look, a new fresh viewing of the situation. You can see what was done in the past, and you have a whole new perspective because you weren't in for the infighting or whatever was going on in the past. So I think Chad hit on the head. It's about the voters taking power. And that's why I tell everybody, vote Sam King.
Okay. Another question. This is Chris from Kakako. I'm a non-Hawaiian, and I'm trying to educate myself and determine whether or not I want to vote in this race. What are 3 things I should know about you that distinguish you from your opponent to get my vote? Of course, 3, they could vote for all 3 of you, right? Which is what you guys are endorsing. But in terms of, let me just phrase this a little bit differently, and I'll throw this at Brickwood first. What are the 3 differences about you from the current trustees that they should choose you over, say, incumbents?
I think the mix of experience, political skills, the fact that I understand governance. I think Lei is the only former legislator of the entire board. But I bring the subtleties of governance to the board, and relationships is what it's all about in politics. And I have good relationships with the current legislature. We're going to have a brand new governor coming up soon. I have good relationships with either one, whomever survives that race. But I believe that I can bring a special sense of politics to the table.
Sam, do you feel like you answered that question already by saying you know how to spell fiduciary? And
I certainly think it helps. I mean, I think my legal background is something that value adds. I'm not sure if there's an attorney on the board currently, and I think that would help. I have a real estate background, so I understand a lot of the land issues that OHA is going to, get to be impacted by. I've also been a board member of my homeowners association, which seems small, but in the end, you're winning the trust of the people that you live with to manage their money. And that's very similar to what the Office of Hawaiian Affairs does. It's obviously a bigger scale, but that's talking about how to spell fiduciary. You got personal liability if you're on a homeowners association board. So,
Chad, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that this Board of Trustees, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Board of Trustees, needs to be made up of different people, right? And you've got 3 different players right here, right? If you created a team of all the same players, you're not going to have much diversity. You're not going to have much change, right? I bring a uniqueness. I don't think there's anyone in this race that's like me. I bring all the things I've talked about before, but my teamwork and experience as a professional athlete. I've helped rebuild teams from the bottom to the top, winning championships. Just everything you need, the energy. I've already built the trust in the community through my athletic career, so I know they trust me. They see my work ethic. They know what I'm going to bring to the table. And I have that connection. You know, Brickwood talked about relationships. I've got the connection. I can be that bridge, that extension of the people's arms, their voice, because they already trust me. And I think that's my sort of advantage.
Okay, we earlier talked about issues, just what was most important, and everyone sort of said they're all important, but I think we should try to hone in on some of these issues. One question that I would have, and we'll start with you, Sam, is that, you know, Native Hawaiians score very poorly in many measures of health. And, you know, I have not seen OHA that involved in Native Hawaiian health issues. What can OHA do to deal with the poor condition of Native Hawaiian health?
I think that's actually a huge challenge. I mean, you asked me the number one issue, and I'm going to say early childhood education. You should vote for Sam King, because I will get early childhood education a priority at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And that's going to go to the health issue. The problem OHA has is that everybody wants it to be everything to everyone. And that's not possible. OHA doesn't have that kind of money. It's not the state of Hawaii. But what it can focus on is the highest impact, the highest return on investment thing you can do, and that's early childhood education. OHA's health plan, if you look at their annual plan, it's kind of distracted. You can't really tell what they're doing, what they're focused on. And it's because healthcare is huge. It's a massive industry, and I'm not sure there's a way that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs can use its money most effectively in that industry. I would focus on early childhood education, because if you focus on that, you're going to get those better life outcomes, right? You're going to stabilize families, you're increase merit, two-family households from the kids that get early childhood education, plus their kids. You're going to prevent incarceration, which increases health outcomes, right? You're going to increase their income. And those social determinants of health are what's going to increase their life outcomes.
Chad is a very healthy Native Hawaiian.
Yeah, health and wellness, yeah, you're talking to me. Right. That's what it's about. I think there's a lot of ways you can go with health and wellness. Number one, I believe it's the food, right? And I think we can help in that self-sustainability world, organic, everyone, farming from home. There's things you can do now. It's right there for us to be able to grow our own vegetables, fruits, and the necessary things we need on a daily basis to be healthy. And that just helps promote a lifestyle change, because it creates a habit, and then from that habit, you go out and you start buying healthier foods, you start eating healthier.
Let me ask you a question though. As a person who had to stay healthy just as a career, did you have a hard time as a young person turning down a lot of the crap that people end up eating?
Yeah, so and I say this a lot to a lot of people. I said it was part of my profession. So it's like it was easier for me. But I mean, if you look at this pandemic, right? What did we all learn? Man, we gotta start living healthier lives so we can combat these things, so we can combat sickness. And I think that should have been a huge eye opener to everyone. And I do believe that, yeah, like Sam said, we can't accomplish it all at one time. But I do believe we can start to implement things. We can start to plant seeds, in various ways. But in health and wellness, that's my baby, that's my passion, and I love to sort of take a lead in that section.
Rick, your thoughts about the health issues?
Well, the health issues that face Hawaiians seem to be systemic in a sense, but nobody wants to be unhealthy. Right? Nobody wants to keep on looking for health care around. It's also very complex. It seems to be generational, so there's no quick fix here. So I would say that the best thing we could possibly do is to increase our collaborations with other areas of Native Hawaiian health care, Papa'ololokahi. We got the existing Kanaka Maoli communities that we can go to. There's the collaboration with existing Queens Medical Center, Queens Systems rather, Kamima schools. Strengthen those collaborative efforts, and I think if we can do that, we can at least move towards solving this very complex and multi-generational problem.
Let me move on to another issue here, homelessness and housing. Chad, I'll let you start with this one. What's OHA's role? You've got Department of Native Hawaiian Homelands, which seems to have a homeless component, but where does OHA fit in that? I mean, housing and homelessness is huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And again, it goes back to what Brickwood said, it's collaborating. You know, all these entities, aren't we all doing it for the same reason? Aren't we all trying to better the lives of the Hawaiian community, the Hawaiian people? Hey, if you're homeless, you shouldn't be treated any different. You're Hawaiian, you should be serviced. We should find a way to resolve those issues. And I think, again, we need to collaborate more so we can do more. I think that needs to be a huge, huge priority because, yeah, we don't have all the money. We get millions of dollars, but it's not enough, right? But if we collectively create this monster, if you will, we can do some damage, I feel, with this collaborative effort. And maybe it's like, okay, you guys are gonna take hold of these issues because that's, you know, you have the means and the funds and things like that. You guys are gonna be in charge of this. I think it's time to start dividing and conquering. And to me, that's how we can really move the needle when it comes to helping our Hawaiian people.
Say about housing and homelessness, big problems in the neighborhood.
I mean, can we agree with each other more in here, this debate panel? I don't know what we're talking about.
I'll work on that.
I mean,
it's just the obvious. It's the obvious.
I mean, collaboration is the key. Again, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs should focus on the highest return on investment. That's early childhood education.
Let me ask this question.
Go for it.
So how do you do you see OHA as being the catalyst of that cooperation, or is you're waiting for someone else to come up and be the catalyst?
Oh, no. I mean, you can always wait. I don't see any reason to do that. I'm not running to be a trustee to sit around waiting. I am a man of action. If you're voting for me, you're voting for action. You're voting for results. That's why you put me there. And what I'm going to do is be the catalyst for that change, right? I'm walking door to door. I'm hustling. I'm moving out. I'm meeting people, greeting people. Just like Brick was saying, it's about relationships, right? You go out there, you collaborate. I've started nonprofits that support, the astronomy and space industry in this community. I've taken action to support the things that I believe in publicly. People have seen that I take strong stances, and that's a way to collaborate. And it's important to note that it's not about pushing against people, right? It's about building those bridges, about being that bridge and being able to say, this is what I believe in, this is what I think we can do, and then finding those connections. Housing, partner with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, right? Look at where they can go. And even with the development community, get in touch with the Land Use Research Foundation, right? And say, okay, we know there's a lot of iwi kupuna in this particular area. Get some archaeologists, say, don't build here, right? You could start mapping out something maybe that says, these are the areas you could build homes, because that's really what we need.
Brickwood, as we were talking about this, a group of 50 Native Hawaiians, I guess, all watching TV together in Kaimuki, affordable housing for Native Hawaiians. What are you going to do to get homes for Native Hawaiians? In addition to or in collaboration with the DHHL, or what do you think?
Yeah, that and, housing is a moving target here, right? And so you got emergency, you got transitional, you got long-term, you got permanent, you got affordable. And right now, OHA is already leveraging partnerships because this is an issue that I'm paying attention to, because living in the Kaka'ako area for a little while, you go outside and every 50 yards you get a homeless guy talking to himself, right?
Right next to a huge
right next to a
luxury tower.
big, beautiful condominium. It's really interesting dichotomy. But so I was writing down just some obvious collaborations. Okay, and OHA is a state apparatus too. So we should be the lead machine in some of these areas. But you got the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, you got Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation with the funding process. You got DHHL, obviously, right? And I still think we should partner with the other Native Hawaiian Kanaka Maoli organizations too.
I just occurred to me when you mentioned Kaka'ako that OHA does have a certain amount of property in Kaka'ako, the Kaka'ako Makai parcels, and it's been kind of stymied what they're going to do with that. I don't know what forgive me for not knowing this. I know that there's a collaboration with Waimea Falls and places like that, but where OHA has land, you would have a say in whether housing could be built there.
Right. And I know that Kaka'ako Makai, that's a huge project, right? I know it's up on their list that they want to get going. But I know there's areas on that soil that aren't deemed for residential, so we need to look at the pockets that can be used as residential. I think the biggest thing is that combination of commercial, residential, that way it's, turning over, making money. We talked about a Hawaiian Cultural Center. where people can come in, tourists, local people, everyone, and learn more about the culture. We need something like that. We need that. Right? Why don't we have a Hawaiian cultural center? And I think Kaka'ako Makai could be a potential landing spot of that.
Let me ask the same question.
We
Properties
did
out
the
there?
deal. We did the deal. I was the chair of the Hawaiian Affairs Committee in the Senate, and there was we owed OHA money, okay, for the ceded lands. Okay, when the Cayetano administration capped it at 15.1, it just did not equate because the ceded lands take in so much more.
Let me just explain to viewers. So in the Constitution, it identified 5 areas of trust responsibility, and OHA was identified as
The
having...
Admissions Act.
It was the Admissions Act.
Yeah.
The Constitution, I think, said that OHA is entitled to a portion based on that, right? Of the government revenues.
In 5 different areas.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Constitution says it explicitly, but the general point is that that one of the challenges is that OHA under the Admissions Act there's 5 enumerated purposes. One of them is bettering the condition of Native Hawaiians. OHA is meant under the Constitution to allocate that money. The state of Hawaii had decided that 20% was the number based on those 5 enumerated purposes in the Admissions Act. The problem is that everybody says this money is owed to Hawaiians. The Supreme Court's already come out and said that's not how it works. It's whatever the legislature decides. So whether or not the money is or is not owed is a political question. The legal answer is it's whatever the legislature says.
Okay, Brickwood, I just wanted to make sure people understood that there's a funding component that comes in based...
Yeah, there's annually based on ceded land revenues throughout the state of Hawaii. And so we were, as a state, woefully deficient in what was owed, if that's the right word, to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, because the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is the receptacle that the funds come through. Okay, so we were really, really deficient on that. Years and years, and it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So we cut a deal, let's give OHA Kaka'ako 20 parcels. And I'll never forget, I was walking in one day to my office and Senator Clayton He was sitting there and he says, let's go talk some story. We're coming in $40 million short. That's the value proposition there. I said, if we don't do it now, Senator, we're not going to do it at all. We have a governor who's willing to sign. Let's do it. Let OHA figure out what they're going to do with the lands. It may not be maximum potential because the 40-story towers, but you still got 20 parcels in urban Honolulu. Why don't you trade it off with something?
So I need you to what's the main point you want to make from that story?
The main point is that OHA has lands that has not been utilized to its maximum potential.
Okay, so
Daryl, can I just touch on that real quick?
Very briefly, I got a lot of questions.
I read Attorney General David Louie's book, and he talked about Kaka'ako. The reason that they did the deal was that they wanted to provide housing in Kaka'ako Makai. And that's a very hot political issue in our community. And I think the key is to partner with Kamehameha Schools, which is the other major landowner, another Ali'i trust, the city, the state, to build a community that provides homes for local people and has that cultural component through like condominium documents. I used to do condominium documents, and you can create that kind of master association with maintenance fees that can provide that cultural component, and you can have parking for surfers and all that kind of stuff, the things that people were upset about. It's doable. I can do that kind of thing. We can do that collaboration.
I got to move on. So Anonymous Hilo, they're asking for 2 positions on TMT and water rights. Let's start with TMT, and I will give you the first shot at that, Sam King, because you seem to be the most vigorous advocate for that. It must be somewhat difficult to run for OHA with that as a headwind.
Oh, not at all, actually. I mean, the polls show that the majority of the people of Hawaii support the project. Now, the majority of Native Hawaiians, that has not been polled as extensively. And I go door to door and I meet Native Hawaiians and I talk to them about it. And number one, it's not their highest priority. And a lot of Native Hawaiians I meet are interested in bread and butter issues. Early childhood education, that's the number one thing that people hear. They're like, that's a winner, right? I can get over that. But the 30-meter telescope project, one of the biggest challenges is if I believed all of the misinformation or any of the misinformation about that project, I wouldn't support it either. The problem is that none of it is true. The project doesn't harm the aquifer. It's not disgracing or desecrating the mountain, right? it perpetuates in the best way possible our culture of celestial navigation and natural observation. That's a beautiful thing to me, right? That's something I want to preserve. That's the Polynesian Voyaging Society. That's what their energy brings. And I've been working with the Native Hawaiians in our local community, kids born and raised here that are just getting into the industry, the astronomy and space industry. Makana Silva, Tyler Trent, Ambry Mai Hong, Brylan Onodera, these are people we got to know, right? Lenani Lozi, these are people you got to understand that they're out there. They're just getting into the industry. We built the whole thing. For 40 years, we've been fighting this fight, and we're saying, oh, there's no locals, no Native Hawaiians especially in the industry. We're just getting that fruit now. And if you stop TMT, which is the next generation, right? And we're taking down, a number of telescopes to do it, and you're putting in TMT. And if you do that, you're going to have that next generation for another 50 years. You're going to make Hawaii the center of that ecosystem. That's why I support it.
Chad, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's, I'm going to be honest, my overall full knowledge of TMT isn't, like, I don't know all the nuts and bolts about it, but here's what I do know, right? The people of Hilo in the Big Island and our Native Hawaiian community, they're against it. They don't want it. So for me, someone that's running for this position, I'm sitting here talking about listening to the voices of our people. Okay, what resolve do you need? If they're telling me, ole TMT, this is why, this is sacred, this is what we feel, and I'm for science. I think there's so many other opportunities that we can utilize science in Hawaii. But I'm not gonna go against what our people are wanting. And so with that, like I am not for the 30-meter telescope. I'm not for that. I am for the people and what they want and respect what they need.
Brickwood, your thoughts?
Well, Mauna Kea is sacred. Sacredness is subjective. What I think might be sacred, you may not feel sacred, but I hope that we can find a respect for each other's thoughts. Now, having said that, I support both culture and science. I've supported the TMT on Mauna Kea for what it provides humanity. Unless something compels me otherwise, I'll remain that way. But management of Mauna Kea is critically important as well, and I don't think it's that. Put it this way, the legislature has put together a new management authority. Hopefully, the right people who respect each other's and their viewpoints, it'll be a good balance and a valued balance too. Culture and science must be together. I consider any telescope on the mountain that's not being used opala. Get it off the mountain. We still don't enjoy a good community, robust community benefits package that should come from anything being done on the mountain. That could be a part of the problem as well. But I have a different viewpoint, okay, Daryl, that I haven't heard before. And it comes with the fact that culture and science, for me, the example of culture and science intersecting together is the fact that we can look into our own creation. I mean, I'm not going to get too deep because I'm not a cultural expert per se. But in the first 10 lines of the Kumulipo itself, the creation chant talks about the black hole. Now, we've been given a gift, a makana, of the best platform to view our own creation. Now, why wouldn't we want to take advantage of that?
I guess my question would be, to what Chad says, the last poll I saw, it was kind of, even within the Hawaiian community, it was pretty evenly split. A lot of times when something's evenly split, it tends to go to the people who are opposed to it because, that's just the nature of politics. You need a majority to actually make something happen. Chad, you've heard these two gentlemen. Does it change your personal opinion versus what you're hearing from the community?
No, not at all. I mean, I stand with that, and again, I stand with the people, and like what Brickwood's saying. If there comes a point in time where we all can agree on something, and we can all agree on this is going to be a benefit, and you know what? Let's do this. And I'm not necessarily talking about TMT. I think that's the way it needs to be. You need to be in agreement. Or else, and on the flip side, yeah, you're never going to satisfy everyone. Whether you're right, wrong, like that's just the nature of the world. But I sit with what the people wanting and their voices, and I'm going to stick to that until they tell me otherwise, until they change, until they tell me, Chad, you know what, it's okay. Like we're actually gonna do this.
I mean,
Daryl, I got to jump in on this one.
Really short.
This is vital. It's vital. Saying the people want this or that's an impossible thing to know, even if you do a poll. That's why we have elections. And whether or not all Native Hawaiians are voting or only Native Hawaiians voting, it doesn't matter, because that's not how it's going to be. But I also talk to the people. I talk to people, right? I know on imuatmt.org, we got a list of people that are Native Hawaiians that support this project. Leimomi Lum, the kahuna of Mo'okini Heiau on the Big Island, supports this project because she sees it as honoring the sacred nature that she believes Mauna Kea has. Right? That's her belief structure. That is something I can get behind. So there are Native Hawaiians that support this project. We're talking about trash telescopes on the mountain. The reality is every telescope up there is producing high quality science. We're taking some down already right now, keeping promises. But every single one is being used, right? That's the thing about it. When the TMT first came up in 2019 specifically, the poll showed 70% Native Hawaiians supported it. It was only when all of this false information came out about TMT being nuclear powered or it's damaging the aquifer that people switched sides, and they haven't paid as much attention since.
Okay, I think that what I want to do with this, I'll give both of you guys another chance to respond, and then we'll move on. But it strikes me that what you're identifying as being false information, yes, it was all flying around there, but the heart of the thing still, I think, is the spiritual issue.
Look,
to me, I think that's where people are.
Hawaiians, we viewed, the stars, we navigate just from our eyeballs, right? From the aina, looking up, we never had telescopes, never looked, we never, there's technology today to further things and to look deeper, and I get that, the depth of what can be done there, but at the end of the day, I look at it of the old times and what
Brickwood, last point is, do you think that this is so divisive, it's a risky issue for OHA to take up?
No. Nothing should be risky for OHA to take up. That's why OHA is OHA. And, as I mentioned earlier, it is the representing governmental apparatus for Native Hawaiians. So anything that Native Hawaiians touch, OHA should have something to do with it.
Okay, good. I'm going to move on because we need to. I know.
No.
That's been a lot. Thanks, though, all three of you. Water rights. The theft of the water from the Hawaiian people is been a fatal blow to that culture. Brickwood, I'll ask you, is there a role for OHA in helping work out these huge disputes over access to water, especially surface water, places like Maui, even Oahu? Sure. There's places where water was taken and it was damaged tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. The diversion of the water for the use of the plantations, well, there's no plantations these days. I mean, very few, if any. So it should go back to the regular path that it was before. And I got to take my hats off to all of the farmers and the activists who, like Nawai Eha on Maui. You mentioned that, right? Because through their hard work, the water has now gone the path that it's always gone before the plantations. So yes, OHA needs to play a role in water rights.
Sam?
I think OHA can play a role in water rights. Water rights. OHA has that moral center to our community, and so there's a place for it. Water is a very, very complicated issue. It's property rights at some level, and water isn't just for we're talking about the past, right? Like the past we've moved on. Not everybody here is growing taro anymore under a feudal system, right? We're now living in homes, and homes need water, and that's where a lot of the water rights go to, right? And that's a discussion. Do you want more affordable housing? You want housing people can afford? They need water. Do you want to move the water back to the stream? Yeah, the plantations are gone, so let's move on. I think it's something that the community can have a conversation about. I would be happy to see fewer lawsuits about it. I think OHA spends a lot of money suing people that could be spent on early childhood education. That's why you should vote for Sam King.
Well, you thought about water quite a bit?
Honestly, no, I haven't. But it's obvious. The more we can be involved to resolve, that's our job, right? As an OHA trustee, right, as a team, it's our job to service our Hawaiian culture, our people. And if it's finding resolve in the water issues, and then that's what we have to do. But yeah, there's nothing Hawaiian related that we cannot throw up on the board and have discussions about and find a way to, again, I talked about planting seeds, we should be planting seeds all over the place, and when it sprouts, we water it more, we give more love, but yeah, there's no issues that we should not be involved in.
Okay, so I think that Sam kind of brought this up. Uncle Rick and Kailua, they bring in millions of dollars, but where is the money going to? Why is it going to administration instead of the people? Why are people in the streets and bushes? Why can't they build a bunch of domes and give them shelters at least? They keep praising themselves for a broken wheel. I don't think he's talking about you so much, but
Mahalo.
then John in Hawaii Kai, should we allow mobile homes in Hawaii to provide more cheap housing? Sam, let me start with you though. Do you think that there's better ways that the money should be spent? I mean, if you find a wait.
That's a little broad. Yes.
How about
early childhood
pre-K
education?
Yeah. What kind of things should they be spending money on? Do you think that they're spending money on things that they shouldn't be?
Absolutely. Early childhood education is a thing that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs should shift its focus towards. That doesn't mean you stop spending money on everything, but that's the thing that's going to better the condition of Native Hawaiians. OHA's existed for 40 years, and Native Hawaiians, according to DBED anyway, are still suffering from the highest rates of poverty in the state of Hawaii. What's going on? There hasn't been a concerted focus on early childhood education. You can make the argument that OHA needs more money, and that's not an excuse to me. You got to focus on the thing that's going to have the highest return on value.
Let me ask you though, when you talk about early childhood education in a Hawaiian context, do you see it being, because I think all the candidates that are running for governor now are promising some increase in level of early childhood education, but is there a specific focus that they should put early childhood education on Hawaiian families?
Nope. OHA's beneficiaries are Native Hawaiians, so that's the focus. I mean, to the extent that if they're supporting a charter school and that charter school has everybody in it, then excellent. But early childhood education is 0 to 5 years old. You're helping kids. I mean, there's a preschool project, right? People should go to votesamking.com, go to the issues page. I have a whole bunch of stuff about it. The preschool project, high scope curriculum. The way you set it up is you say, this is the grant we want to give out. Here's the curriculum we want you to touch on. But if there's other elements that you want to add in that families will apply to, go for it. You have a religious element, you have a keiki aina, you got a cultural element that's about language, it's about lo'is, whatever. You can add that in as long as you're hitting the core curriculum. And then the families can choose. Okay, good.
Brickwood, what do you think of what they spend money on, and what would you spend differently?
I've given that some thought. I think, first of all, I'd like to examine all of the different ways OHA is spending money, for starters. But there's one area that I always thought OHA found itself deficient in, and that's its relationship with the number one industry, the visitor industry. So if you want to sink some money into something, why not sink it into an industry where you can drive Kanaka perspective into that industry too? I think they're doing well right now under the leadership of HTA and the destination management concept, the Malama Hawaii concept, but that's where I think some of the corpus should go to. Invest in hotel, because when you invest in the number one industry, you're also investing in jobs.
You're saying buy hotels?
Well, I would say if you're going to invest, let's invest in something that is, like we're coming out of the pandemic now, right? I went into Waikiki the other day. The place is cooking and it's only 50% full. So I think we should be deeply involved in the visitor experience too. And why? Let me finish off. When I was running the Tourism Affairs Committee, Tourism and Hawaiian Affairs Committee, we made a
interesting combination.
That is an
of
interesting.
missions.
I was just thinking that.
Tourism and Hawaiian Affairs, yeah. And because we wanted to put that together, when I talked to Mike McCartney, who was the HTA chief at the time, I said, listen, all of the strategic plan, you have Hawaiian culture in it with 9 other strands. Turn that strand this way so Hawaiian culture is in every aspect of the visitor industry, because we don't need a bigger seat at the table. We are the table. Hawaiian culture is the table.
Okay, Chad, again, the question was about where would you like to see the money go?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what Brick was saying, I'm not in there yet. So we really don't know where money's going. Right,
that's kind of an issue.
That's the issue, and that's kind of why we're sitting here, and that's why people got to vote. And so, as far as where, I do like Brickwood's, ideas of investing into real investments. When you think of investing, you're making a return. So investing in things that's going to allow us to make money, right? But utilizing that cultural aspect, providing jobs for our local people, our native Hawaiians, and educating, in the tourist industry. That's why I think a cultural center is big. Can there be a hotel built in Kaka'ako that provides that cultural sort of atmosphere? I believe so. So investing in things that make sense, but we won't know what that looks like until we get in and we look at the game plan and find a way. You know what? These plays, my football, these plays are out, right? We need to create a new playbook, and whether we've got to find a new quarterback and just read the coverage better. We got to see what the defense is doing on a weekly basis, finding new issues. But yeah, we need to pour our resources into the things that are going to provide returns for us, that way we continue to do our job, and that's service the people.
We got about 5 minutes to go, and one of the saddest situations is the amount of incarceration, the level of incarceration in the Native Hawaiian community, the drug problems, which are getting worse again with the fentanyl hitting. Sam King, what do you see as OHA's role in dealing with a problem like that? Wait a minute, I can hear it. Early childhood education?
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Careful,
hopefully I didn't break my mic. I'm so excited that now early childhood education is everywhere, coming out of Daryl's mouth. That's also the answer.
Okay.
Early childhood education.
That's enough then. Okay, Chad, your thoughts about that? I mean, drug use and incarceration.
Crime, incarceration, it's just a lack of jobs. It's a lack of money. It's the cost of living, right? So it's forcing people to step outside of what they really want to do and make these mistakes. And so I think to help with that, so overall health and wellness, right? Not just talking about the physical, I talk about eating. Hey, mental health, having people, supporting organizations that support our people and their mental health and encouragement and, battling addictions. A really good buddy of mine, I'm gonna throw his name out there, Richard Cooper, sober 8 years, and he is a consultant. He wants to help people break these addictions and get into a better lifestyle for themselves. Those are the type of people we need to have on board to sort of throw into the community, because that's we're trying to prevent those things, but some people they don't have the support. When you don't have support, parents, friends, the people you surround yourself with, you don't have that support, you can't help but go down this path. Right? But if you have a support system, you have someone that can step in and say, you know what, no, there's a better way. We can decrease that.
Is there a role, Brickwood, do you see for OHA in dealing with that issue, drugs and prison?
Collaboration. I'll go back to, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just partner and help the people who are doing it. As an example, there's a program called Kawailoa. Yeah, it's with Partners in Development. And Mark Patterson is one of the leaders, and he used to run the detention homes.
The youth facility, yeah.
As a facility down there on the Windward site. Well, they just received a $20 million grant from Kellogg. That's the type of collaboration that we need to seek out and to support as well.
Final question, we've only got a minute or so. There's a disconnect in this community between the Hawaiian culture and the rest of the culture. How, Sam King, how would you bring those things together? Is that OHA's job?
I think it is OHA's job. It's impossible to answer this question in a single minute. The reality is that we all live here together, and this culture that we have here is united. It is, whether or not you want this or that, our culture is one. This is the culture of this place, of Hawaii. I mean, I've traveled all over the world. I've been very blessed in my life to be able to do that. And everywhere I go, everybody loves Hawaii. Part of it's what Brick would talk about, the tourism industry, but it's really about the idea that there's a place in the world where there's an aloha spirit, where everybody can love each other for who they are, the content of the character, not the color of their skin. And I think all those things can be bridged together. And I want to try and do that. I want to do
Chad, your
that.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Sam took the word out of my mouth there at the end. It's aloha. It's what makes us special. People come here, they feel the aloha spirit. That's why they keep coming back. We got good food, we got the culture, we got the beaches, we got beautiful weather. But the aloha spirit is what captures them. it's that's the type of addiction and endorphins I think I want people to have. And I think as locals, non-Hawaiians, Hawaiians, we're living in Hawaii, it's so easy to forget that mana that we have, the Aloha spirit. So being that I have traveled, I've moved away, so I was able to experience, the mainland, Canada, and getting to see different cultures. I was able to bring aloha, that spirit, and keep that with me, and took it everywhere I went, and it was infectious. It affects people in such a positive way. We need to remember that. We need to go back to our roots and spread that message. And the only way we do that is to continue to get out into the community and educate people on
about
that.
20 seconds, Brickwood. I apologize. What do you think about that? Do you ever worry that aloha is in jeopardy?
No. And to go back to the Bloods, we're all poi dogs. I mean, I'm Hawaiian, Filipino, Portuguese. I'm proud of every one of them. There's a hybrid there too. And so everybody vote for OHA. Okay. And vote for me, and if you want to, vote for them.
Vote Sam King.
Very good.
Chad Owens for
There
OHA.
you go.
Guys, all right, thank you so much. Mahalo for joining us tonight. We would like to thank our guests, the at-large candidates for OHA Board of Trustees, Sam King, Chad Owens, and Brickwood Galataria. Please join us next week as we review proposed changes to county charters across the state. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.